My name is Rudolf Hertle. I am a retired pastor and the son of the missionary couple Wilhelm Hertle and Hedwig Hertle. My father was the first Lutheran missionary to enter the Wiru area. I am here to tell you the story, and this is part 2 of a series of 15 parts which we will offer to you. When my parents arrived in Jabim in 1958, the work of the Lutheran mission had been going on for 3 years. The missionaries had already had contact with the Wirus, who had been visiting the station regularly. The mission workers were evangelists. They came from Mount Hagen, Raipinka, Biliau, Ulap, and from the Jabim congregations on the coastal areas. Jalibu was very fortunate to have the experienced evangelist Korowa, who had helped Reverend Hermann Strauss to translate the New Testament into the Melpa language. My father described him as an outstanding evangelist who had been in the work from the very beginning. By his faithful example, he gained the respect of all evangelists as well as the confidence of the locals. His advice and counsel based on his experience was a most valuable help to our work. The Hagen evangelists were particularly qualified because they could pick up the Jalibu language very easily. Both languages are closely related to each other. The Jabims responded very strongly to the call of the church to spread the word of God in the southern and central highlands. About 70 young men came, but the most experienced evangelists were placed in the Jimmy Valley. Some went to Wabi, and some of them came to Jalibu. My father was surprised to meet Gedisa in Jalibu, a church leader who had been teacher in Bumayong and who later became the district president of the Jabim area when he arrived. Gedisa had just come back from an inspection trip in the highlands and wanted to discuss matters where to place evangelists in the Wiru area. They had already received 30 requests for evangelists from villages of the Wiru. As they did not have so many evangelists, they met with Reverend Chake and decided to call some Wiru headmen for further consultation. After a long meeting, they decided to place 12 to 15 evangelists on the border of the Wiru area. The villages chosen were Mondanya, Tindua, and Walup. 3 evangelists were to be posted in each village respectively. Here they were to build up contacts to the Wiru and learn the language. The Jabim congregations considered the Wiru to be their new mission field. The conditions were much more favorable for them than in the cold Jalibu. Besides, the food was rather monotonous, consisting mainly of sweet potatoes and now and again pit shoots. The coastals were used to a big variety of food, ranging from yarrow, tums, bananas, pawpaw, pineapple, mangoes to coconut and all different fish. The only fruit available at that time were mulberries and gooseberries. The Wiru area was much warmer, where even bananas could thrive. Above all, the land was much more fertile. For coastals, this was a much better place to live. Christmas 1958 saw a big event in Jalibu. For the first time, the Christmas story was enacted by the evangelists and students. The open air was full of people, and many Wirus and even members of the police force were present. It was a step forward in the method of evangelization, as now stories of the New Testament were to be taught. 1959 marked the takeover of the Jalibu station to my parents. Reverend Chake took a motorcycle ride with my father and showed him as many villages of the Jalibu station as he could. Unfortunately, not all stations were staffed, as some evangelists from Raipinka had left their posts. Even Gedisa was not able to convince them to stay. Reverend Chake then packed his boxes and the couple left for furlough on the 5th of January 1959. Much later, an aircraft, a Norseman, came to pick up the boxes of charcoal. My father heard the aircraft take off, but then he could not hear or see the airplane anymore. He rushed to the office of the commissioner to make a report and found the pilot sitting in the office with a few bruises and scratches, but in good health. The pilot reported that somehow the engine had failed and he landed in the swamp. He himself was catapulted out of the aircraft and landed in the soft mud. He said he was lucky to survive and felt particularly happy that he did not have his son with him, as he had planned to do so previously. My father went to the site and found the plane upside down in the swamp, one of the few aircraft accidents without fatal outcome. My mother took the household helpers of Charke, which were 2 boys at the age of 12. Both of them spoke Wiru. One of them, his name is Yoga, would later become one of the most valued co-workers of my father. After a short training, the household matters were left to the boys, and my parents were free to do other indispensable work on the station. A normal day started at 7 a.m. At 8 a.m., school started. My father gave 2 lessons in English, as there were no qualified teachers available. Then other teachers took over with different lessons. The trade store opened at 12 noon and later at 5 p.m. The main problem at the school was a shortage of teachers and instruction books. It was only resolved at the end of the year when a teacher from Madang and later from Wabi took over the teaching. Mother's daily routine was a little different. She gave correspondence course lessons for Adelheid from 8 to 10 a.m. After that, she worked at the dispensary. Sometimes she had up to 30 patients. She also took on midwifery obligations, which sometimes called for house visits. From 2:30 to 5:50 p.m., she had meetings with women and girls. They generally did handcraft, while my mother gave Bible lessons or told Bible stories. The medical work of my mother was crucial in strengthening belief in Christian faith. Many serious illnesses were brought to my mother after they had been treated by the locals by offering pigs to spirits. When this did not help, they brought the patients to my mother. She was able to treat them with modern medicine and gave them healing. When visitors from Wiru arrived, my father spent many hours sitting down with them, listening to their stories, smoking cigars, and talking with them. His aim was to build up friendly relationships to them. He knew the art of Melanesian conversation. At first you inquire how things are at home. The family, the garden, the pigs. And after smoking a few cigarettes and a few cigars with Bruce, you can come to the point. Each visitor was given a small token of friendship, like a bar of soap. A headman received an axe. Later, when my father visited the respective villages, he was greeted like an old friend. In the year 2000, I visited the Wiru area, and I was interested to find out why people wanted to visit my father. For this reason, I asked some old men, and this is what they said. We heard that there was a man in Yalibu who was able to resolve the reason of war and conflict between enemies. So we went to Yalibu and looked for the man, and we found your father. One day, the headman from the village of Ponowe, which had a very good evangelist, came and brought his bow and arrows to my father. He handed them over to my father with the remark, "I have heard that war is against the will of God. In future, I will not need such weapons any more, because I will not make war again." In the course of the next weeks, all members of that village came to the station and handed over their weapons to my father. He gave them a small amount to account for the material loss, but it became evident that the word of God had gained foothold in the region. It became evident what one of the main reasons was why the people turned to the new faith. The people were longing for a peaceful life, and they sensed that it was not possible in their own cultural setting, in their own cultural framework, to come to such a peace. They had peace treaties, which were elaborate ceremonies and compensation payment, involving pigs, kina shells, and other goods. Even spectacular dancing festivals in plumed traditional dress with pig killings and traditional mumu served the purpose to strengthen the ties to each other. However, these lasted as long as a new incident occurred or a death that had to be retaliated. Christian faith was a chance they had to free themselves from this endless chain of war and suffering. And they took this chance. For the people in that area, this was a monumental moment in their history. A new age had stepped into their lives. This is part 2 of the YouTube series on a history of the Tiripini circuit. This series will be continued, and I will be happy to welcome you to part 3, Ready for the Race. Ready for the Race. Ready for the Race. Ready for the Race.